Hey, how's it going everyone? Welcome back to Keeping Fish Simple. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about guppies, and in today's video specifically, we're going to be talking about the 7 tips for keeping guppies. Now, I have made this video in the past, and I wanted to do like an update video on that video because I've just gotten some blue dwarf panda guppies and they've been reproducing for me and they've been a lot of fun to keep. So I thought I might as well give you guys some tips on keeping the guppy because guppies are easy to keep, but there's some things that you definitely should know before getting guppies and some little hints to make sure you have a lot of success with these guys because they have been inbred for generations and generations and inbred to make all these beautiful colors, but that comes at a cost and these guys can become sick with like skinny guppies and things like that. So if you wanted to find out how to fix that, there's gonna be a link up there. Yeah, I guess without any further ado, let's just get into it. And this is my tank with these dwarf blue panda guppies, and these guys are available on my website down below if you wanted to check out and get a pair of these guys for yourself. But you can see how beautiful these males are and how some of the females are a little bit drab but still look pretty decent. I mean, some of these females do get these beautiful long fins and yeah, they look really good. So you can see we've got I think 4 males in here, 4 major males, and I bred all of these guys. So I originally got a couple of trios of these, and my first tip is going to be to get healthy guppies from the start. So a lot of the time when I go to pet shops and I have a look around and I look at the guppies that they've got, a lot of the time the guppies just aren't that good of quality. They come in skinny, they come in with heaps of problems, they come in with either dropsy. Some of the females are really fat and have dropsy. So you want to get your guppies from somewhere that's really solid and reliable, and that's going to give you a massive head start over everyone else because then you won't have to deal with any like issues like internal parasites or stuff like that, which guppies can be very prone to. So what you're going to want to do is when you get your guppies, you want to have like a ratio of males to females, because as you can see, these males are just chasing around this female because they always want to breed and get it on, and this female is just getting like absolutely terrorized by these males. And it's not too much of a problem because the females are completely used to it in here and these guys aren't aggressive towards each other, but it can stress the females out. So what you're going to want to do is have 1 male for 2 females or even 3 females. So you're going to want more females than males initially. That's going to give you the best head start with these guys. And that's my first tip, to get quality guppies from a good reliable source and get a ratio of 1 male to 2 females or 2 or 3 females. Okay, and then tip number 2 is going to be to medicate often. Now this might seem counterintuitive and something that doesn't seem very complicated, but I can't stress how important this tip is and how crucial it is to having really good success with guppies and breeding guppies. So a lot of guppies are really prone to specific diseases, but in particular guppies are really prone to internal parasites. So internal parasites can either come in the form of tapeworms or certain nematodes as camellanus worms, which are terrible and really hard to deal with. So what you're going to want to do is you want to medicate your guppies for worms. There's also a specific type of live bearer's disease. I think what the live bearer's disease does is it attacks the skin of the guppies. Now I'm not too sure, but there are a lot of things you can do to prevent this. So these guys, yes, they are freshwater fish, but you can use salt on these guys, and that's a really good way to medicate your guppies. So if your guppies are in a tank with just guppies or even just a bristlenose in there, the bristlenose seem to do okay with salt. So you'll have to do some research and find out which of your species in your tank can actually deal with salt. So in this tank, for instance, you can see maybe down here we've got some of these Borneo suckers. Now these guys are a loach and won't do well with salt, so I can't salt treat this tank. But do your research, and I do once a month a treatment of 1 tablespoon per 2 gallons of salt. So use just regular aquarium salt, or you can just use like pool salt or something like that. Just make sure it's pure salt and doesn't have any additives, and that'll work really well because that'll actually kill off a lot of the external parasites and help you with your live bearer's disease. Now that won't help with worms as much, and what you're going to need to do for worms is get some special medications. Now the first medication that I'd like to recommend is levamisole. So this stuff is, as you can see, it's used for poultry and pigs. So levamisole is really good for treating that live bearer's disease, which I was talking about before, but this stuff is also really good for treating nematodes. I treat every month with levamisole. The normal dosage would be 2 mils per 10 liters. This is a really good medication to use for those, and I do once a month with this. And then the other medication that I like to use is this fluken tapeworm tablet from Blue Planet. So you can get all different types of medications across the world, so don't stress too much. You're just going to look for this chemical. So this is praziquantel. Now this stuff is really good for tapeworms. So tapeworms are the worms that get inside of the guppy, make it really skinny, and then it makes the guppy do little white poops. So I treat with this as well once a month, and that'll really help with keeping healthy guppies and prevent those guppies from getting sick. Okay, and then tip number 3 is going to be pertaining to the water parameters for these guys, and this tip is going to be to keep these guys in hard water. Now this again is a super important tip for these guys. They really do require hard water, and yes, they can be kept in soft water and things like that, but once these guys get into some hard water, they're just going to go so well. So there's a few things you can do for hard hard water. When I talk about hard water, this is because there's a lot of beginners probably on this video. Soft water means that there's hardly any minerals in the water or less minerals in the water, so a low KH and a low GH. And then hard water tends to have quite a lot of minerals in the water. So these guys like tons of minerals in the water, and there's a few things you can do to get those minerals up. When I talk about hard water, I'm really talking about like a KH and a GH of about 200 parts per million, and that should be really, really good. And normally that'll equal to a pH of about 7.2 all the way up to about 8. And these guys will absolutely love that. So to add minerals to the water, there's a few things you can do. First of all, my water out of the tap is relatively soft at only about 50 parts per million. So you can see in this aquarium, I've added a bunch of sand, and that'll help boost that GH and KH up. And they're also in here with a bunch of boulders. So those boulders will also boost the GH and KH of this aquarium and help a lot. Sometimes when I do test the water and there's quite a lack of GH and KH in here, I'll also add some additives, so you can get those from the shop as well, and they'll boost up that KH and GH and help you quite a bit. But probably the easiest thing to do, and something that I should have in this aquarium but I haven't, is add crushed coral. So just a little tiny bag of crushed coral will really help to boost that KH and GH in there. That's my third tip, is to keep these guys in hard water, and they'll really just thank you for it. Okay, and then tip number 4 is going to seem, again, super counterintuitive, and the reason it's going to seem counterintuitive is because I don't do this in this specific aquarium, but this tip is going to be to keep these guys in a planted tank. Now, the reason I say that and the reason I don't have plants in this tank is, first of all, because there's hardly any fish in here, so there's not a lot of bio load. And the reason I say to keep them in a planted aquarium, plants are really, really good for maintaining a super stable and healthy ecosystem, because those plants are going to use all those nutrients and minerals that the guppies provide by doing like little poops in the aquarium and all that leftover food, and they're going to use those nutrients instead of causing huge ammonia spikes and crashing your tank, and they're going to provide a really stable tank and help to oxygenate the water. Now, the reason I don't have those plants in here is because there's only a few guppies, so once these guys do breed up and have quite a few more babies, as you can see there's quite a few babies up the top of the aquarium and all that kind of stuff. Once these guys do end up having quite a few of them in here, I'm going to add some like wisteria or some fast growing plant just to help stable out the aquarium. And the second reason also to add plants to an aquarium is to add heaps of hiding spaces for those little babies to go, because you can see in here there's just mountains of these boulders in here, so the babies would go in there and hide in all those boulders when they're first born and avoid being eaten by the parents, but the plants provide just as good of a hiding space for those little babies to go. So that's my 4th tip, is to keep these guys in a planted tank. And then tip number 5 is going to be to feed these guys a varied diet, and this again is another tip that I can't stress enough, and something that'll give you a whole bunch of success, particularly with this special food, which is baby brine shrimp. So baby brine shrimp's a great little live food to use to vary up the diet, and guppies just seem to love it. That makes them grow really quick, it makes them grow really solid, and they just really do good off of it. Now, what I'd recommend for feeding a varied diet is, there's probably going to be like a video up in the top right hand corner where I've made a video on this, but I'd feed a tropical flake, and I'd feed baby brine shrimp, and every now and then I'd feed, I don't know, maybe some daphnia or something like that. Try and get as much live food in there as possible, because these guys are omnivorous, but they will mostly eat a lot of protein, and it'll help them grow quite a bit. So be careful not to overfeed, because otherwise you'll dirty up the water in the aquarium and you'll bloat the fish. And yeah, feeding a varied diet's great. These guys get baby brine shrimp once a day when I hatch it, and I feed it to everyone else in the fish room. These guys get the leftovers, and you can just see how well they're doing and how well they've grown and how good those males look, and there's no bent spines or anything like that. So okay, and then tip number 6 is going to be a tip that I think is quite useful for maintaining really, really healthy guppies, and this is going to be to add new bloodlines. So what I mean is add a couple of new bloodlines every now and then to vary up the genetics in your tank, and that way you won't have genetic bottlenecking, because you won't have too many siblings breeding with each other, and they'll spread those new genes around, and it'll really make a strong guppy without, you know, having tons of guppies that are born with bent spines and all that kind of stuff. So this is a really useful tip for maintaining a guppy colony really long term. How often would I recommend to add a new guppy? Well, I'd recommend getting some new guppies at least once a year and throwing them in with your current colony and trying to get some new bloodlines in that way, but probably the best way to do it is to add a new guppy every 6 months, depending on how many guppies you do have in your colony. So like you can see all these guys in here, they're all brothers and sisters, and they're all breeding and they're making babies, but I'll probably have to get some more of these guys in the future, maybe in the next couple of months, to add in here to try and vary up those bloodlines. Now, before you go and add any old guppy to your aquarium, please, when you go and get your guppies, make sure that they're quality and that you quarantine them before adding them to your tank. So I'd put them into a quarantine tank or like a little tub and monitor them and make sure that they're not sick and they don't bring any parasites or anything like that into your aquarium, and that way they won't ruin your current guppy colony. And then tip number 7, the final tip, is going to be to breed a strain of these guys. So this is more for the fact that, like, obviously guppies are very, very easy to breed, and I'm assuming everyone here has got some knowledge of guppies and has kept some guppies probably in the past and are looking for better ways to keep their guppies. And as you can see, they just breed really prolifically, and part of that is at some point you're going to need to get rid of guppies, so either you're going to give them away to friends or you're going to sell them to a pet shop. The best thing that you can do for the guppies and for yourself is to try and breed like a strain of guppies, because that way you won't just create all these mutt guppies, you'll breed a strain, and they're a lot more desirable for a lot of pet shops and things like that if you have a strain. So I'd maybe get some of these like dwarf blue pandas or some like Dumbo mosaics or just whatever suits your fancy, and really focus on trying to breed that strain. Yeah, but I guess that's going to wrap this video up, guys. Thank you so much for watching it. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed seeing all these fish in here and learning about them, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.